It was a summer morning in 1985, like any other at Camp Echo, birds chirping, canoes bobbing on the lake, and the smell of breakfast drifting from the mess hall. But by sunrise, 7 children were gone. No signs of struggle, no footprints. In the dirt, just empty beds and a single canoe drifting in the lake with one chilling word scratched into its side. Come. For nearly 4 decades, the mystery of the missing children remained unsolved, buried under layers of fear, silence, and failed investigations, but in the summer of 2023, a drought-drained Lake Echo dry for the first time in history, revealing something no one was prepared for, a hidden boathouse beneath the mud. With 7 child-sized beds still made, and an old camcorder that had never stopped recording. Detective Naomi Vega had spent most of her life chasing ghosts, not the kind that haunt old houses, but the ones that hide in plain sight. The case of the Lake Echo 7 wasn't just another missing persons file to her, it was personal. She had grown up near the camp, heard the rumors as a kid, and watched how fear shaped the lives of everyone in the town. When the boathouse was discovered, Naomi was the first responder on the scene. What she found inside wasn't just a crime scene, it was a message. The beds were too clean, the air too still, and the camera still blinking red. The footage they recovered would shock the FBI, reopen old wounds, and unearth the truth far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. The tapes told a story that spanned generations, a twisted ritual hidden beneath the surface of a quiet town. Names like Michael Langford and Caleb Langford surfaced, linked to the disappearances, but the deeper they dug, the more confusing it became. Langford was supposed to be dead, killed in a car crash in 1986, but the fingerprints didn't lie, and neither did the voice on the tapes. Someone had been keeping this secret alive for decades. And worse, someone had been continuing it as the investigation unfolded. A young girl named Sophie became the key to everything. Found alive in a hidden pink room deep in the woods. She carried more than just scars, she carried memories. Memories of a man in a red fox mask, of whispered lullabies in the dark, and of something beneath the lake that never really let them go. Her drawings, simple at first, began to reveal patterns: 7 beds, 7 doors, and one name that kept appearing over and over again: Naomi. Now, early 2024, the FBI has released new details that have stunned investigators and terrified locals. The cycle wasn't just about abduction, it was about control, belief, and something deeper that still hides beneath the water. And as the lake slowly refills, swallowing the secrets it once gave up, one question remains: was Sophie really the last dream, or is someone already preparing for the next one? Stay with us as we uncover the full story, a story of obsession, ritual, and a town that tried to forget. But some things don't stay buried forever, and the lake remembers everything. The investigation had taken a turn no one could have predicted. What started as a missing persons case from 1985 had become something far more sinister, a decades-long ritual, carefully orchestrated and hidden in plain sight. The discovery of the boathouse beneath Lake Echo had peeled back the surface of a buried truth, but the deeper they dug, the more unsettling the picture became. Naomi Vega had seen a lot in her years as a detective, but nothing like this. The footage from the camcorder, the condition of the beds, the eerie silence that seemed to follow her every step. It wasn't just a crime scene, it was a stage, a waiting room for something far worse than abduction. Naomi had always felt a strange pull toward Camp Echo, though she couldn't explain why. She'd grown up just outside the town, heard the rumors as a kid, whispered stories of the missing children passed around like campfire legends. But it wasn't until she stood inside that boathouse, staring at the 7 child-sized beds still made, that she realized how deeply this case was tied to her own past. The VHS tapes had confirmed what she already feared. Someone had been watching, recording, planning. And now, after decades of silence, the lake had given up its secrets. The name, Caleb Langford, kept surfacing, always attached to something disturbing. The FBI had traced purchases, property rentals, and even a few anonymous donations to a man who shouldn't exist. Michael Langford had died in 1986, or so everyone believed. But the fingerprints on the tapes told a different story. The man who had once been the head counselor at Camp Echo had never left. He had simply changed his name, erased his past, and continued his work under a new identity. But he hadn't done it alone. Sophie, the girl found alive in the pink room, had drawn something that made Naomi's blood run cold, a mirror, with 2 faces. One was Langford, the other was unknown, but Sophie had whispered the name in her sleep. The Red Man. The drawings had started as childish sketches, but they evolved into something else: maps, symbols, warnings. She didn't speak much, not at first, but when she did, her words carried weight. She knew things she shouldn't have known, things that had never been made public. She spoke of voices in the dark, of a man who wore a fox mask and sang lullabies. While the camera recorded. Harper had been skeptical at first, but even he couldn't deny the evidence. The storage unit in Bend had been filled with tapes, each one labeled with a name and a date. Some were from the 80s, others from the 2010s. The same handwriting, the same obsessive documentation. The tapes showed a pattern. Children, always girls, always between the ages of 7 and 11, always placed in the same pink room, always filmed the same way, always missing something. Naomi had watched hours of footage, searching for clues, trying to understand the ritual. The children weren't just being taken, they were being prepared. The pink room, the camera, the soft lullabies, it wasn't random. It was part of something bigger, something older than Langford himself. Loretta Mayfield, the former camp nurse, had confirmed what Naomi had suspected. Langford had been grooming children long before the disappearances. He had a way of making himself indispensable, of slipping into their lives without raising suspicion. He had handpicked the kids, always the quiet ones, the ones who didn't have strong family ties, the ones who wouldn't be missed as much. But Sophie had been different. She had been the last dream. Naomi didn't know what that meant. Not yet. But she knew it wasn't over. The footage from the hidden cellar beneath the caretaker's cabin had revealed more than just names. It had shown a belief system, a twisted doctrine built around the lake, the water, the idea of preservation. Langford hadn't been just abducting children, he had been trying to keep them alive, in some form, for something. And then there was the spiral. Naomi had seen it carved into the dirt near the siblings' campsite. The same one Sophie had drawn over and over again. It had also been in the cellar, etched into the wall in chalk. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a message, a marker, a sign that the cycle wasn't just about the children, it was about the lake itself. The storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy. Naomi had returned to the boathouse more than once, each time hoping for something new, something they had missed, but the lake was already reclaiming what had been exposed. The rain had started again, slow at first, then harder. The cracked earth was softening, the silt shifting back into place. And then there was the tape, the one labeled Naomi Dream 7. She had watched it once, and never turned it on again. It showed her as a child, standing near the lake, smiling at the camera like she knew exactly what was happening. The voice on the tape had been Langford's. Steady, almost affectionate. Asterisk, you are Dream 7. You belong to the water. Asterisk, it wasn't just a coincidence. She had been chosen, just like the others. But she had escaped. Somehow, Naomi had tried to push the thought aside, to focus on the case, on the missing children, on Langford and the Red Man. But the more she learned, the more she realized that she wasn't just investigating this case, she was part of it. The FBI had reopened every unsolved missing child case within a 200-mile radius of Echo County. They were finding patterns, similarities, names that had once been dismissed as unrelated. The tapes had given them leads, but also questions. Why had the cycle stopped in 1992, only to resume again in 2013? Who had taken over when Langford disappeared? And what had happened to the children who had never been found? The graves had been shallow, but the remains were enough for identification. Some of the names matched missing persons reports from the 80s. Others were from the early 2000s. All girls, all between the ages of 7 and 11. But not all of them had been buried, some had simply vanished. Naomi had seen the disposal notes in Langford's journal, but not all of them had been followed. Some children had been returned to the lake, whatever that meant. The phrase kept appearing in his writings. The lake chooses 7 beds, 7 children, 7 dreams. And now, Sophie had drawn something new. 7 doors, 6 open, 1 still closed. Naomi had asked her what it meant. Sophie had whispered, asterisk, he left something behind. Something still inside. Asterisk, Naomi didn't know what that meant yet, but she intended to find out. The Red Man had been captured, but the lake hadn't given up its secrets. Not all of them. There were still places they hadn't searched. Still rooms hidden beneath the earth. Still tapes they hadn't found. And somewhere, deep beneath the water, something was waiting. Langford was still out there, and if the lake had truly chosen 7, then that meant one more was still missing. Or worse, one more was still dreaming. The storm had passed, but the sky still hung low with clouds. Like the lake wasn't quite done holding its breath. Naomi Vega stood at the edge of the water, hands in her coat pockets, watching the surface ripple under the first drops of rain. The drought had broken, and the lake was refilling fast, swallowing the secrets it had kept hidden for so long. But some things didn't stay buried, not really. Back at the station, the case files were piling up, but the real story wasn't in the reports. It was in the silence that followed every interview. In the way people avoided eye contact when asked about the past. In the way Sophie still drew pictures of rooms that didn't exist and faces that no one recognized. The Red Man was in custody, but something told Naomi he wasn't the end of this. He was just another hand in the cycle. Another voice in the water. Elias Boone hadn't spoken since his arrest. Not a word. He just sat in his cell, staring at the wall, humming a lullaby under his breath. Harper had watched the footage from the bunker again and again, trying to find a clue, a motive, anything that made sense. But the Red Man didn't seem to be acting alone. There were too many notes in Langford's journals, too many references to the seventh dream, too many maps with markings that didn't match any known geography. And then there was the tape, the one labeled Naomi Dream 7. She hadn't watched it again, not since the first time. She didn't need to. The memory had come back on, its own flickers of a childhood she had buried deep. A man's voice whispering her name, her mother's hand pulling her away from the woods. The feeling of being watched, even when she was alone. Loretta Mayfield had refused to talk after the first interview. She said she had said enough, that some things were better left in the lake. But Naomi had seen the fear in her eyes, the way she kept looking over her shoulder like someone was still watching. Loretta had been the camp nurse, but she had known. More than she let on, she had seen the signs, tried to warn someone, and been silenced. Now she lived alone in a house that felt more like a tomb than a home. The FBI had gone through every missing child case in the region. They found more names, more disappearances that had never been connected before. Some were from the 80s, some from the early 2000s, and a few from just last year. All girls, all between the ages of 7 and 11, all with one thing in common: they had been near Lake Echo at some point before they vanished. But the lake wasn't the only place. The storage unit in Bend had led them to a network of hidden rooms, secret paths, and underground spaces that had been used for decades. Some were in abandoned cabins, others in forgotten tunnels beneath the forest. One of them had been under a church, another beneath a school. All of them had been pink dot. Naomi had seen the photos from the hidden cellar. Beneath the caretaker's cabin, the chalk drawings, the maps, the notes in Langford's handwriting. He hadn't just been documenting the children, he had been preparing for something. A ritual, a rebirth, a return. And Sophie had drawn it all before any of them knew. The girl hadn't spoken much since being rescued, but her drawings told a story that no one could ignore. She drew the lake at night, glowing from beneath. She drew the boathouse with the 7 beds, only one of them occupied. She drew a mirror with 2 faces, one of them hers, the other unknown. And then she drew something else, a spiral carved into the dirt with 7 lines leading out from the center. One of them pointed directly at Naomi. Dr. Morse, the trauma specialist, had warned Naomi not to push too hard. Sophie had been through something that couldn't be undone. She had been raised in a world where the lake was more real than the sky, where the camera was more alive than the people around her. She believed in the cycle, not just because she was forced to, but because she had been taught to. And that was the scariest part. This wasn't just about abduction. This wasn't just about control. It was about belief, about faith, about something older than Langford, older than the camp, older than the lake itself. Naomi had read the journals again last night. Langford's handwriting, neat and precise, describing the process like it was science. The pink room, the lullabies, the recordings, the way the children were prepared, how they were shown the lake in dreams, how they were taught to listen to the water. He called it preservation. He called it protection. He called it love. But what he had really been doing was something else. He had been building a bridge, and Sophie had drawn the other side. The storm had uncovered more than just the boathouse. It had revealed tunnels, hidden rooms, and underground chambers that had been sealed for decades. One of them had been found beneath the old fire lookout tower, another beneath the ruins of the mess hall, and then there was the one beneath the lake itself. Forensic divers had gone in after the water receded, searching for anything that might have been left behind. What they found chilled even the most seasoned among them. A room carved into the bedrock, lined with mirrors, filled with child-sized beds, and a single camera still mounted on a tripod. The footage had been erased, but the room had been preserved like a shrine, like someone had been waiting for the 7th dream. Naomi had gone back to the hospital to see Sophie again. The girl was quiet, but her eyes were alert. She handed Naomi a new drawing without a word. This time, it showed a house on the edge of the lake, with a red door and a man standing in the window. His face was blurred, but his eyes were clear. He was watching. Naomi asked her who it was. Sophie didn't answer. She just pointed at the lake. Langford was still out there, and he was watching. The FBI had confirmed that the man who had been seen on surveillance footage near the gas station was indeed Michael Langford. The dental records had been faked in 1986, but the DNA matched. He had been hiding in plain sight, changing his name, moving from town to town, rebuilding the cycle every time he disappeared. But he hadn't done it alone. There were others, people who believed in what he was doing, people who had helped him, people who had continued the work even when he wasn't there. Naomi had seen the names in the journals. Some were dead, some were missing, some were still alive, living normal lives, raising families, going to church, volunteering at the local school. No one suspected them. No one ever did. But the lake remembered. And now, so did Naomi. The rain picked up again as she walked back to her car. Thunder rolled in the distance, and the wind carried the smell of damp earth and something else, something old, something buried. She looked back at the lake one last time before getting in the car, and for a moment, just a moment, she thought, she saw something move beneath the surface. A hand, Rising, waiting. She drove away without looking back. The rain hadn't stopped in days. The sky hung low and gray over Echo County, the kind of storm that felt like it had been waiting for something. Naomi Vega stood at the edge of the lake, her coat soaked through, watching the water rise. It had been weeks since the last body was recovered, since the last tape was played, since the last dream was spoken aloud. But the lake hadn't forgotten. Neither had she. Back at the station, the files were piling up again. New reports, new sightings, new whispers from the woods. 2 more children had gone missing in the past month. Same pattern, same silence, same word carved into the dirt near where they disappeared. Come. The red man was behind bars, but the cycle hadn't ended. It had only paused. And now, someone else was carrying the torch. Harper had tried to talk her out of going back to the boathouse. It's not safe, he'd said. Not for you. But Naomi hadn't listened. She needed to see it again, to feel the cold air, hear the silence, understand what she'd missed the first time around. The boathouse had been sealed, declared a crime scene, but the tape she'd found beneath the floorboard still played in her mind. You are, Dream 7. You belong to the water. She had been chosen, just like the others. But unlike them, she had escaped. She stepped inside the boathouse, the door creaking under her hand. The 7 beds were still there, untouched by time or wind. The air smelled like dust and old wood, but beneath it was something else, something wet. She moved slowly, scanning the walls, the floor, the camera mount where the camcorder had once stood. Her flashlight flickered as she knelt beside the same floorboard she had pried open before. The space beneath was empty now, but something had been there. Something was still missing. A sound behind her made her turn. The door was still open, but the rain had stopped. The air was too still, too quiet. She reached for her gun, fingers brushing the grip, but something told her it wouldn't help. This wasn't about bullets or badges. This was about belief, about ritual, about something deeper than fear. She stepped outside and looked toward the lake. The water was calm, almost too calm. In the distance, the old fire lookout tower loomed against the sky, its silhouette sharp. Against the clouds, she had been there. She had found nothing but a message on the wall and a tape that played forever. But now, she knew better. The lake didn't give up its secrets. It only waited for the right time to reveal them. Back at the hospital, Sophie had started speaking again. Not much, just fragments, names, places, things she had seen in the pink room. She had drawn something new, a spiral with 7 lines, one of them pointing directly at Naomi. He left something behind. She had whispered. Something still inside. Naomi had asked what she meant. Sophie had only stared at her, eyes wide, lips trembling. He's not gone, she had said. He's waiting. That night, Naomi sat in her motel room, the blinds drawn, the lamp casting a soft glow over the table where she had spread out every photo, every map, every note she had taken since the beginning. The Langford tapes, the Red Man's journal, Sophie's drawings, the police reports, the medical files, they all pointed to one thing. The cycle wasn't just about abduction. It was about something older, something passed down through generations. Langford hadn't started it. He had only continued it, and now, someone else had taken his place. She traced her finger along the map of the lake, following the shoreline, the trails, the hidden paths that led to places no one had searched. There was one place left. One place that had never been fully explored. The original cellar beneath the caretaker's cabin. The one that predated Camp Echo itself. The one marked on the old geological survey from the 1800s. Settler cellar. Do not disturb, sealed 1891. She had been there. She had seen the chalk drawings, the generator, the freezer filled with relics of the missing children. But there had been something else, something she hadn't gone back to check. The 7th bed, the one that had been occupied. She had assumed it was Sophie, but now, she wasn't so sure. The next morning, she was back at the cabin. The sheriff's department had moved on, the forensic team had packed up, and the media had long since left. She was alone, standing at the edge of the cellar hatch, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. She descended the stairs slowly, the air growing colder with each step. The room was just as she remembered its stone walls. Chalk drawings, the table with Langford's journals. But this time, she didn't stop at the center. She went straight to the 7th bed. It was still made, just like the others, but something about it felt different. She ran her hand along the mattress, feeling for something hidden, and then, she found it, a small seam, barely visible, stitched into the underside. She pulled it open. Inside was a small wooden box, wrapped in cloth. She opened it carefully. Inside was a tape, labeled in the same handwriting as the others. Naomi, Dream 7. Her breath caught. She pulled out the portable VCR, inserted the tape, and pressed play. The screen flickered. Static, then video. A child's face filled the screen. Her face, younger, maybe 8 or 9, standing at the edge of the lake, smiling at the camera. A voice behind the lens. Say your name for the lake. Naomi. Asterisk, the child whispered. Asterisk, Naomi Vega. Asterisk, asterisk, you are Dream 7. You belong to the water. Asterisk, the footage cut. Replayed. Cut again. Naomi dropped a player. She staggered back. Heart pounding. This wasn't possible. She hadn't been at Camp Echo in 1985, had she? The memory came back in pieces. A shadowy afternoon. Her mother's voice calling her name. A man's hand reaching for hers. A promise whispered in the dark. Asterisk, you'll come back when it's time. The cycle always returns. Asterisk, she backed out of the cellar, climbing the stairs faster than she meant to. The air outside felt thick, heavy. The sky was darker than it should have been. Thunder rolled in the distance. She got into her car and drove. Not toward town. Not toward safety. Toward the lake. By the time she reached the observation ridge, the storm had returned. Rain poured in sheets, the wind howling through the trees. She stepped out of the car, flashlight in hand, and made her way down the trail. The lake was rising, fast, swallowing the cracked earth, reclaiming what had been exposed. She moved along the shoreline, scanning the water, searching for something she couldn't name, and then she saw it. A shape beneath the surface, a reflection that didn't match the sky, a figure standing where no one should be. She stepped closer. The water was black, but she could see it clearly now. A child, a girl, smiling at her. Miriam. Naomi single quotes, as breath caught. She reached out, fingers brushing the surface, and then the reflection changed. Miriam was gone in her place. Was Naomi, but her eyes were closed, and beneath her, the hands were rising. One by one. 7 of them. All reaching for her. She stepped back, heart hammering. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. The rain hadn't stopped in days, and the lake was rising fast. Naomi Vega stood at the edge of the water, her boots sinking slightly into the soft mud, the wind cutting through her jacket like a blade. The sky was a low, bruised gray, and the trees along the ridge swayed like mourners. The lake was alive again, swallowing the cracked earth, burying the secrets it had coughed up for just a moment. And somewhere beneath that black surface, something was still waiting. Back at the station, the case file had officially been closed. Langford was still out there, but the FBI had stopped issuing public alerts. Boone was locked away, speaking only in riddles. His eyes glazed over like he was still hearing a voice only he could understand. Sophie had been released from the hospital, but she wasn't the same. She didn't speak much, and when she did, it was always about the lake, about the hands, about the dream that hadn't ended. Naomi had tried to leave it behind. She had packed up her desk, handed in her badge, and told herself she was done. But the dreams kept coming. Always the same one, her as a child, standing at the lake's edge, smiling into the camera, saying her name like it was a promise. Asterisk, Naomi, you are Dream 7. You belong to the water. Asterisk, she had tried to ignore it. She had even driven out of Echo County for a few days, hoping the distance would clear her head. But it didn't. The closer she got to the lake, the more the memories surfaced, flickers of a childhood she had buried deep. A man's voice, a lullaby, a pink room that felt more like home than any real one ever had. And then the call came. It was from the hospital. Sophie had woken up screaming in the middle of the night, drawing again. But this time, it wasn't just a mirror, or a spiral, or a row of empty beds. This time, it was a map, a crude, shaky drawing of the lake, with a single X marked near the northern inlet. And beneath it, written in red marker, asterisk, he's not gone. He's waiting for her. Asterisk. Naomi didn't hesitate. She drove straight to the hospital, soaked from the rain, and stood in the doorway of Sophie's room. The girl looked up at her, eyes wide, lips trembling. He said you'd come back, Sophie whispered. Naomi knelt beside the bed. Who said? The red man, Sophie said softly. He's still under the water. He said, you're the last dream. Naomi felt her stomach twist. No, Sophie. The cycle is over. But Sophie shook her head. No, he said the lake only sleeps when the seventh dream wakes up, and you never woke up. Naomi didn't answer. She couldn't, because deep down she knew Sophie was right. Later that night, she went back to the boathouse. The police tape was still up, but the rain had loosened it, and the wind had torn parts of it away. She ducked under it and stepped inside, the air still cold, still preserved like it had been waiting for someone to come back. She didn't go far. Just to the center of the room, where the tripod still stood. The camcorder had been removed, but the lens was still trained at the beds. The same 7, still made, still untouched. She ran her fingers along the wood, feeling the grooves, the names carved in by children who had once believed they were chosen. And then she saw it, a new carving. Not on the bed frame, not on the wall, on the floorboard beneath. She knelt down, prying it up with her knife. Inside was a small metal box, wrapped in cloth. She opened it carefully. Inside was a VHS tape, labeled in the same handwriting as the others. Naomi, Dream 7. She didn't take it with her. She couldn't, not yet. Instead, she drove to the hospital and asked to see Sophie again. The girl was awake, sitting up, drawing again. This time, it was a house on the edge of the lake, a red door, a man standing in the window. His face was blurred, but his eyes were clear. Watching. Naomi sat beside her. Who is that? Sophie didn't look up. He's waiting for you. Naomi felt a chill crawl up her spine. Where is that house? Sophie pointed at the lake. Langford was still out there, and he hadn't stopped. The next morning, the storm broke. The sky cleared, but the lake was still swollen, still dark. Naomi stood at the edge of the ridge again, watching the water, feeling its pull. She had spent her life chasing monsters, believing she could stop them. But this wasn't just about Langford or Boone or even the lake. It was about belief. About faith, about something older than fear. And now, she understood. She wasn't just investigating this case, she was part of it, and the lake wasn't done with her yet. Back at the station, Harper was waiting. He handed her a report, his face pale. Another disappearance, he said. A girl, 8 years old, last seen near the northern inlet. Parents said she was drawing strange pictures before she vanished. Naomi took the report. The girl's name was Rowan, and beneath the report, stapled to the back, was a Polaroid, a child's hand, holding a red marker, a drawing of 7 beds. One of them occupied, one of them labeled Naomi. The cycle hadn't ended. It had only just begun. The rain had stopped by the time Naomi Vega reached the lake's edge. The sky was still gray, heavy with clouds that hadn't fully released their burden. Behind her, the forest was silent, as if the whole valley was holding its breath. In her hand, she held the last VHS tape, the one labeled Naomi, Dream 7. It was heavier than it should have been, like it carried more than just film. It carried memory, it carried truth. She wasn't alone. Barper stood a few feet behind her, silent, watching. He hadn't tried to stop her this time. He knew it had to end here. The red man was in custody. Langford was still missing, but the cycle had been broken, or so they thought. The graves had been unearthed, the children had been accounted for. Sophie was safe. Or at least, that's what they told themselves. But the lake remembered. Naomi pressed play on the portable VCR. The screen flickered, static, then video. Grainy, washed out. A child's face filled the screen. Her face younger, smiling, standing at the edge of the lake. A man's voice behind the lens, calm, practiced, almost affectionate. Say your name for the lake. The child on the screen looked directly into the camera. Naomi, the voice again. You are Dream 7. You belong to the water. Naomi's breath caught. She had seen this before. She had lived this before. The memory had come back in pieces, flashes of a childhood. She had buried deep, a man's hand in hers. A lullaby, a promise whispered in the dark. You'll come back when it's time. The screen cut to black. Harper shifted beside her. Naomi. She didn't answer. She couldn't, because the lake had always felt different to her. Not just a place, not just water. It had always been watching, always waiting. And now, it was full again. The storm had refilled it faster than anyone expected. What had once been cracked earth was now a deep, black mirror. The boathouse was gone. The cellar was buried. The pink room was sealed. But the lake remained, and so did the dream. She turned toward it. The surface was still, unnaturally so. No ripples, no wind. Just a reflection that didn't quite match the sky. And then she saw it, a hand, just beneath the surface. Then another, and another, 7 of them, rising, waiting. Naomi took a step back. Harper reached for his radio, but the signal was gone. The trees blocked everything. The valley had gone silent again. She looked down at the tape player one last time. The screen flickered again. One final image, a woman standing at the lake. Her face, but her eyes were closed. The screen went black. Harper's voice was low. Naomi, we need to go. She didn't move, because she knew. She had never truly left. The lake had taken her once, and now, it was calling her back. She stepped forward. Harper grabbed her arm. Naomi, don't. She looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled. I have too. She pulled free and walked into the water. It was cold. Deeper than it should have been, but she kept going. The hands beneath the surface reached for her, and she reached back. Harper shouted her name, splashed into the lake after her. But the water was too thick, too heavy. It pulled at him, pushed him back. Naomi disappeared beneath the surface. No splash. No ripple. Gone. The lake was still again. Harper stood knee-deep in the water, gasping, calling her name. But there was no answer. Only silence. Only the lake. And then, a whisper. Not from behind him. Not from the air. From beneath the water. Naomi. He stumbled back. The forest was quiet again. The lake remained, and in the distance, Sophie woke up screaming. Back at the hospital, Dr. Morse tried to calm her. What did you see? Sophie sat upright, trembling, clutching her drawing pad. The 7th dream, she whispered. It's not over. Dr. Morse frowned. What do you mean? Sophie flipped to a new page and began to draw. A lake, a mirror, a woman standing in the water, and beneath her feet, a reflection that wasn't her own. It was Miriam, smiling, and behind her, 6 more faces. 7 dreams. 1 missing. The lake had taken them all, and now, it had her. 2 weeks later, the Echo County Sheriff's Department officially closed the case. Langford was presumed dead. The red man was declared unfit for trial. Naomi Vega's name was quietly removed from the federal database. Her badge was returned to her apartment, cleaned, polished, and placed inside a wooden box with a note. Asterisk, you were never meant to come back. Asterisk, but Sophie knew better. She still drew every night, still whispered in her sleep, and every time she looked at the lake, she saw her standing at the edge, waiting. Dream 7 had returned, and the cycle had begun again. The rain had stopped by the time Naomi Vega stood at the edge of the ridge. The sky a bruised gray, heavy with clouds that hadn't fully released their burden. Below her, Lake Echo was rising fast, swallowing the cracked earth, burying the secrets it had coughed up for just a moment. And somewhere beneath that black surface, something was still waiting. Back at the station, the case file had officially been closed. Langford was still out there, but the FBI had stopped issuing public alerts. Boone was locked away, speaking only in riddles. His eyes glazed over like he was still hearing a voice only he could understand. Sophie had been released from the hospital, but she wasn't the same. She didn't speak much, and when she did, it was always about the lake. About the hands, about the dream that hadn't ended. Naomi had tried to leave it behind. She had packed up her desk, handed in her badge, and told herself she was done. But the dreams kept coming, flickers of a childhood she had buried deep. A man's voice, a lullaby, a pink room that felt more like home than any real one ever had. And then the call came. It was from the hospital. Sophie had woken up screaming in the middle of the night, drawing again. But this time, it wasn't just a mirror or a spiral or a row of empty beds. This time, it was a map. A crude, shaky drawing of the lake, with a single X marked near the northern inlet, and beneath it, written in red marker, asterisk, he's not gone. He's waiting for her. Asterisk. Naomi didn't hesitate. She drove straight to the hospital, soaked from the rain, and stood in the doorway of Sophie's room. The girl looked up at her, eyes wide, lips trembling. He said you'd come back, Sophie whispered. Naomi knelt beside the bed. Who said? The red man, Sophie said softly. He's still under the water. He said, you're the last dream. Naomi felt her stomach twist. No, Sophie, the cycle is over. But Sophie shook her head. No, he said, the lake only sleeps when the seventh dream wakes up, and you never woke up. Naomi didn't answer, because deep down, she knew Sophie was right. Later that night, she went back to the boathouse. The police tape was still up, but the rain had loosened it, and the wind had torn parts of it away. She ducked inside, the air still cold, still preserved like something sealed away too long. 7 small beds lined the right wall, each one tucked tight with faded plaid blankets. The floor was swept, the wood wasn't even warped. It looked lived in. She didn't go far, just to the center of the room where the tripod still stood. The camcorder had been removed, but the lens was still trained at the beds. The same 7, still made, still untouched. She ran her fingers along the wood, feeling the grooves. The names carved in by children who had once believed they were chosen. And then she saw it, a new carving, not on the bed frame, not on the wall, on the floorboard beneath. She knelt down, prying it up with her knife. Inside was a small metal box, wrapped in cloth. She opened it carefully. Got inside was a VHS tape, labeled in the same handwriting as the others. Naomi, Dream 7. She didn't take it with her. She couldn't, not yet. Instead, she drove to the hospital and asked to see Sophie again. The girl was awake, sitting up, drawing again. This time, it was a house on the edge of the lake. A red door. A man standing in the window. His face was blurred, but his eyes were clear, watching. Naomi sat beside her. Who is that? Sophie didn't look up. He's waiting for you. Naomi pointed at the lake. Langford was still out there, and he hadn't stopped. The next morning, the storm broke. The sky cleared, but the lake was still swollen, still dark. Naomi stood at the edge of the ridge again, watching the water, feeling its pull. She had spent her life chasing monsters, believing she could stop them. But this wasn't just about Langford or Boone, or even the lake. It was about belief, about faith, about something older than fear. And now, she understood. She wasn't just investigating this case. She was part of it, and the lake wasn't done with her yet. Back at the station, Harper was waiting. He handed her a report, his face pale. Another disappearance, he said. A girl, 8 years old, last seen near the northern inlet. Parents said she was drawing strange pictures before she vanished. Naomi took the report. The girl's name was Rowan. And beneath the report, stapled to the back, was a Polaroid, a child's hand, holding a red marker, a drawing of 7 beds, one of them occupied, one of them labeled Naomi. The cycle hadn't ended. It had only just begun. ###. Prompt for generating images for the scenes in the story. 1. *** scene. Naomi standing at the edge of Lake Echo. Storm clouds overhead, lake rising fast. *** prompt. *** A woman in a rain-soaked coat stands at the edge of a dark, rising lake, storm clouds above, looking down at the water with a mix of fear and determination. Asterisk. 2. Asterisk asterisk scene. 7 beds in the boathouse still made eerie silence. Asterisk asterisk prompt. Asterisk an abandoned boathouse with 7 small beds lined up neatly, dusty and untouched, sunlight peeking through cracked walls, giving a hauntingly preserved feel. Asterisk 3. Asterisk asterisk scene. Sophie drawing a spiral in the hospital, eyes wide with fear. Asterisk asterisk prompt. Asterisk a young girl in a hospital bed, drawing a spiral on paper, eyes wide with fear, holding a red marker, surrounded by medical equipment. Asterisk 4. Asterisk asterisk scene. Naomi watching the VHS tape labeled Naomi. Dream 7. Asterisk asterisk prompt. Asterisk a woman sitting alone in a dark room, watching a grainy VHS tape on a portable player, her face lit by the flickering screen, eyes wide in shock. Asterisk 5. Asterisk asterisk scene. The hidden cellar beneath the caretaker's cabin, chalk drawings on the walls. Asterisk asterisk prompt. Asterisk a stone cellar with chalk drawings on the walls, stick figures, spirals, and childlike sketches. Dim lighting. A freezer in the corner filled with plastic bags labeled with names. Asterisk 6. Asterisk asterisk scene. The red man and the fox, mask standing over an altar in the forest bunker. Asterisk asterisk prompt. Asterisk a man in a red fox mask standing over a wooden altar in a forest bunker, candles flickering, children lying unconscious on a table, symbols drawn in chalk. Asterisk 7. Asterisk asterisk scene. Naomi descending into the underground mirror room beneath the lake. Asterisk asterisk prompt. Asterisk a woman with a flashlight walking down a narrow stone staircase into a mirror-lined room. Infinite reflections. A single chair in the center. A VHS player beside it. Asterisk 8. Asterisk asterisk scene. Sophie's final drawing of Naomi in the lake, hands rising beneath the surface. Asterisk asterisk prompt. Asterisk a child's drawing of a woman standing in a lake, reflection showing a different version of her, hands rising from beneath the water, 7 of them, reaching up. Asterisk 9. Asterisk asterisk scene. The final coffin unearthed beneath the lake bed, name etched into the lid. Asterisk asterisk prompt. Asterisk a mummified child in a wooden coffin, holding a stuffed bear, engraved name on the lid, Miriam Langford, surrounded by muddy excavation tools and stunned investigators. Asterisk 10. Asterisk asterisk scene. Final Polaroid nailed to the ranger station door. Naomi's reflection in the lake with closed eyes. Asterisk asterisk prompt. Asterisk a Polaroid photo nailed to a wooden door, showing a little girl standing in shallow water smiling. Reflection in the lake showing a woman with closed eyes. Naomi Vega. Asterisk.